So the problem with Yahweh was that Yahweh was not very conscious. Okay, his point is that if you're going to build up all these creatures all over the world, millions of species, right? It's not very efficient if you're omniscient to take 400 million years to do it. Right? If you're omniscient, why not just, here you are, right?
Right.
And so Jung's point is that Yahweh was not very conscious, okay? And so one of the lacking things in his consciousness was he wasn't very moral. He was amoral.
Wow.
Okay, he would do both good and bad things, because why would he let Satan beat up on Job when Yahweh is omniscient? Why not just know what Satan would do?
But is he actively being amoral, or through
No, it's just not
ignorance?
very conscious.
Oh, okay.
Yahweh is not very conscious, and
Yes.
so keep in mind from the psychological point of view, Yahweh is only the not very conscious evolutionary part of everybody's psyche. Okay, everybody goes through this. Okay, at the beginning, you don't know what morality is when you're a little kid. You have no idea, right? You have to learn what morality is.
Right.
And so humans were more moral than this entity, this God image in the psyche that is Yahweh. Okay, and so humans, at the time of Job, it started the collective unconscious working on this issue of morality, and it emerged 300 or 400 years later with Moses coming up with the Ten Commandments, right? That was about 1200 B.C.E. Okay. And so that was at the time of the Exodus that Moses went up on the mount and comes back, and he has in the stones he's carved the Ten Commandments, right? Because they came to him from his unconscious, okay? And I'm not saying he didn't have a vision of God, okay? I'm not saying that the metaphysical God didn't do something to Moses.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, maybe he did, but from a psychological point of view, Moses went up on the mountain, he had a vision, and then that vision told him to carve these 10 rules that everybody should live by. And he came down from the mountain and said, well, this is what God told me, and so, let's destroy your graven images and go on, right?
Yeah.
Because his people were building graven images and stuff, right? And so...
Well, it's like an inspired person, right?
He certainly was an inspired person,
with
right?
some, like we could say, the Holy Spirit came upon him.
Absolutely.
And he had clarity of what to tell his people.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this came upon him as a vision from his unconscious.
Yes.
Okay. And, without saying what the metaphysical God did to him, but from a psychological point of view, this is how it came up. And this is how a psychologist of the 20th century analyzes this. He said he had a vision, it was an emanation from the collective unconscious, and so boom.
I see.
Right?
Yes, like it's independent of God. Yes.
And everybody accepted it, so it was something that had been working within the collective unconscious of humans probably since before the time of Job. Okay, but anyway, Job got pinned with the issue. I mean, we don't know what actually happened to poor Job, right? We don't know when it all started, but we know what happened as a result of Job's story. That Job's story is told over and over and over again, like the multi-millenial telephone game, and human beings refine it and refine it and refine it, and suddenly, boom, it pops out as a vision by Moses. Okay, about 400 or 500 years after Job, and it keeps getting refined and refined more. And of course, Moses' 10 Commandments seemed like a good idea, so they stayed in the Old Testament. But also, Job's story kept being told. And so around 600 B.C.E., about 1,000 years after he lived, somebody, maybe more than one person, sat down and wrote down the story of Job as it had been conveyed down the generations all those years. And so what we're seeing is the emergence of consciousness about things. And ultimately, this turns out to be the emergence of righteousness, okay, which is, okay, we don't see righteousness in other creatures. Okay, they behave on conscience, basically. Or they don't. Other creatures don't behave on conscience. They behave on instinct, right?
Yeah.
And so other creatures are behaving on instinct, and so they don't do things based on, is this right and wrong for the other foxes in my community? If you're a fox mother, do you worry about what all the other fox mothers think? If you're anything, if you're the squirrel that's eating my birdseed,
Yeah.
you don't think of
Righteous.
They put this out for the birds, and therefore I should leave it alone. They don't.
What's funny about that, if you think about it, the cattle sit in the window, and these little geckos are going back and forth, and they'll stop and they'll look at them, and they'll know that the cat can't get them, and they'll tease them. And then birds do it too.
Yeah.
So all the animals have some sort of awareness that they're up to being scampy.
Well, but they know where they know they're safe, right?
Yeah.
And so
They know something, yeah. It's not just pure instinct, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, you should see my backyard.
well, yeah, it's not pure instinct,
But
but
I know what you're saying. It just made me think of that.
Yeah,
You
but-
brought the squirrel up. It was your fault.
no, but if you go talk to the squirrel in the tree
Yeah.
and start to have a conversation with that squirrel about whether he should whether he should or should not eat our birdseed,
I don't see a squirrel.
well, yeah,
Well, also, it's survival.
surely,
Yeah.
it's all about survival, of course.
Yeah.
And so, so we're talking about how human beings differentiated ourselves from other species.
Yes.
Okay, because we do have a conscience, in the sense. I mean, maybe it's a bad conscience. I mean, we might be bad people, and we might be doing bad things. Okay, that's the dark side of God, I suppose. But nonetheless, we have the ability to decide what's right and wrong.
I think people get a little mixed up that evolution applies to just about every single organism on Earth, but genetic drift is a part of the human condition for the past 5,000 years, where we have intelligently determined our evolution through all this Jungian stuff that we're talking about, that I truly do not have nearly as good enough clue on as Skip does here, but that we choose our destiny to some degree, and that choice, unlike, say, a single-celled organism, is what differentiates our evolutionary path from others, hence why mankind is probably one of the only species that can truly choose its own demise, while every
Let's
other
see what
species...
Jesus says.
Ah, that's a
What-
good one.
Jesus says, "Man, if indeed thou knowest what thou doest, thou art blessed. But if thou knowest not, thou art cursed." and a transgressor of the law.
Right.
What was it? God, please forgive them, for they do not know what they do.
Yes, of course.
The people who knew who Jesus
Forgive us our
really
trespasses
was,
and
yeah.
forgive those who trespass against
A
us.
lot of humanity's problems is not based upon ignorance, but the choice to be ignorant. And I think that people need to know that. It's not how smart you are, it's how much of your own potential that you seek to choose to obtain. And then we can go into the finer points of what we're going into, the creative process.
Right.
Things that I truly am. I'm not even going to say a novice, I'm a neophyte.
Okay,
I'm
so
in the game, but-
we're back at the very beginning though of this evolution where we're coming out of the instinctual basis and we're getting to the point where we can think about the difference between right and wrong. Okay, about righteousness.
Right.
And by the time we got to Moses, Moses could say, these things are wrong, thou shalt not do this, and so on. Doesn't mean that people don't do it. Of course, lots of people commit adultery, lots of people commit murder.
Right.